Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Late Night Dice Ramblings from the Warp. As always, joined with Kyle and Christian. Say what's up to the fans.
What's up, fellas? How y'all doing tonight?
How's it
Okay,
going, everybody?
don't be saying
Motherfucker,
fellas.
don't be talking over me.
Don't be saying fellas. We have ladies in the audience. Don't be rude.
I have to edit all this shit out. Hey, everybody, how's it going?
And the
So,
rambling begins. God
so
damn.
I want to start by talking about last weekend. So last weekend, Kyle and I made it up to Austin for Wargames Con. Was a pretty dope event. It was a small turnout for Heresy because it was kind of it's not a well known thing for Heresy.
It
At
was the
least
first
Wargames
year,
Con.
though, right?
No, it's happened before, but there's been some miscommunication on some previous years, and they didn't have Heresy last year, so this year was the first year back. At least as far as I've understood it. But I had a great time. It was a really good game, really creative storyline. It I like the idea that my teammate wasn't always my teammate, and my friends weren't always my friends, and then sometimes they get to murder those friends.
Whoa. Did you say you liked that?
I love it.
I don't
Now,
know, man. You seemed some type of way when you were talking about it for a little bit.
so so
I'll
here's
call you out
here's
on the bullshit.
so here's how I feel about it. When I go to an event and they tell me like, "Hey, this is straight up loyalists versus traitors," I'm like, "Cool, it's loyalists versus traitors." And then I get there and they flip the script, I'll be like, "Oh, it's ruined," right? But in this case, we showed up and the guy running the event was just like, "Shit's gonna get weird. Be at peace with it." Cool, cool. It was a great time. The narrative was really cool, and I like the fact this was actually really awesome, and we met some really cool people because of this. We were tied to the 40K narrative event, and they were tied to our narrative event. So they were doing things on their side that were affecting our game and vice versa. And I gotta say, the 40K narrative group was really cool. Their terrain was on point. I wish I'd gotten pictures of it. They had some pretty wicked terrain, really big terrain, multi-level stuff. It looked like a large scale version of Necromunda, but it was 100% 40K, and it had great vibes. They were great people. We met a couple of them. Really good time. The games were really good, and there's a lot of stuff like, hey, we're going to add this mystery model to your army. This next game you're going to have these models to your army. Having the low player count really let him be flexible with the game, where it was a lot more about the fun and the story than it was about just rolling dice and playing the game, which was actually pretty cool. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. Now, it could have also been that I drank an alarming amount of alcohol, but I had a great time with it. I don't think any of us were having a bad time. Okay, small caveat. I didn't appreciate having to kill Angron twice. That, I'm not gonna lie, like the last game we played, they said, "Hey, you've got a little angry Angron on the table, and you have to prevent him from shifting into ascended Angron." And I was like, "Neat, I'll kill him. I brought las cannons for this. Let's go." So, in classic game fashion, I killed the Land Raider he was in. I killed the whole unit, and I was like, "Look, Angron died." Well, beginning or
I'm
no,
sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt here. I'm pretty sure that the Thousand Sun loyalists got the final shot and got that kill under their belt.
you are confused.
My snipers
Hold
got
on,
that
hold on,
last
hold on,
shot.
hold on. Before y'all start bickering and fighting who has the biggest las cannon or whatever, when Gabe first told me the story, the whole narrative and everything sounded amazing. Gabe had a little side tangent about what his friend did to him, Kyle. And now that I get to hear both sides of the story, who actually killed Angron? I'll let y'all
So,
fight over this.
so
Gabe did every wound
yes.
except the last one.
So in
I got the one that
both,
matters.
in the first instance, I killed everything and took Angron down to one wound, and then Kyle finished him with a sniper. In the
Kill
second instance, which we'll talk about that in a minute, I took every wound off of him except the last one, and Kyle took it off with a sniper.
No, the last one I did with the plasma cannons.
I don't like it, but it got the job done. So the concept was you have to kill Angron to keep him from turning into Ascended Angron. And I was like, neat, easy, we'll kill it, it'll be fine. At the end of the combat in the second round, someone from the 40K table came over with a letter that was sealed with actual wax. I kept it. It's in the truck. It said, bring Angron back. So Ascended Angron just popped up on the table, full wounds, in combat with Kyle's tactical squad during our assault phase. So it chewed through an entire unit of Kyle's, and then it charged my last cannons. On the Overwatch, I put 4 wounds on him. Good job, heavy weapon team. But once Angron touches you, and that Ascended Angron on the charge had like 13 attacks. In Horus Heresy, that's a lot of attacks. Like, we get excited about, like, oh yeah, the sergeant on the charge has 5 attacks. 13 is a ton, and especially when he's hitting you with what can only be argued as like a sharp trash can. It's a big ass weapon. And again, the next turn, I dumped mag into him. He was down to 1 wound. The guy we were playing was rolling invols to beat the band, dude. I think in total, I did like 28 wounds to him. Like 18 of them were on his invol, and he passed all but 3. It was gross. I couldn't kill that model. And then Kyle got the last wound on it, and I was like, okay, fine. Angron 2.0 is dead. We're fine. And then I looked at the table, and I looked at Kyle, and I was like, hey, fun fact, we're losing because we forgot to play the objectives while we were killing this big wing demon. We have to go after objectives now. So we pivoted at the end of the game. I really appreciated the way the tables were laid out. I really liked the gameplay. It was a really good time. I met a lot of really cool people, met some new gamers. I had to use my head a lot more than I'm used to, which Alan enjoys the hell out of, just stressing me out, I'm convinced. Because when I played him at Alamo, he did it, and then at this game, he did it again. I just think the guy likes me having an elevated heartbeat. But it was a great time. I loved the event. I'll definitely do it again next year. Hopefully, we'll have a higher heresy turnout in that game. But now I'm gearing up for Warzone.
So, what I've never been. What is Warzone?
Okay, so Warzone is it's a staple in Houston. It's been around for years. Warzone is a multi-part gaming event. So Warzone isn't just heresy, you know, to give them their complete spectrum of love, right? Warzone actually has 7 events. It's a Warhammer 40,000 tournament. It is an Age of Sigmar. That's where Hammerfest GT is held. There is a Horus Heresy Apocalypse and a Horus Heresy narrative event. There is a Star Wars Armada event. There's a Marvel Crisis Protocol event. There's a Warhammer Old World event. And then there's an Age of Sigmar Spearhead, which is a different kind of game event for the Age of Sigmar guys. Warzone is probably one of the heavier heresy events in South Texas that I've seen, where, you know, at Alamo, we're used to seeing around like 12 to 14 showing up. I believe last year when I went to Heresy, we had 20, and that was considered a low turnout year. It's a lot more of it's a lot more narrative based than what you're used to seeing. It's not one of those games where you're going to go in and see a lot of really oppressive, crazy lists. Instead, you're going to see a lot of stuff where somebody just brought an army because they thought it was going to do a cool mechanic. I remember last year I played against an Imperial Fist player who brought like 30 autocannons and a bunch of bolter teams with Imperial Fist and was like, yep, it's just a bolt list. And that's what it did. It was all bolt and auto weapons. Fantastic. Didn't win, But it was really funny to watch somebody say, okay, I'm going to fire 30 shots. Okay, I'm going to fire 20 shots with every volley. It was a fun concept. Warzone is also one of my favorite events to go to because there's a lot of guys who go to Warzone that I don't get to see very often. And the gameplay is always really fun and really engaging. And we drink a lot, which, I mean, that's not like the main reason I go, but it is fun to go and just be able to have a beer, play a game, and everyone's having a good time. It's one of the events I've never heard anything bad about. You know, we hear about certain events where guys are like, "Oh yeah, I went and this thing happened and it wasn't very fun for me," or one of my friends felt kind of, left out. That's never been the case at Warzone. Everyone I've ever talked to was like, "Man, where were you before? How come this is your first Warzone?" I was like, "Shit, man, I don't know. My fault. I'm sorry, I didn't know where you guys were." And they're like, "What do you mean you didn't know where we were?" And that started a whole thing of like, "How dare you not know what Warzone is?" So it's a really cool event. I particularly like their Apocalypse game because it's wild all over the place and it's just a good time. So it's probably the most fun I have at gaming events outside of Adepticon because that's a different breed of gaming event. And one of the coolest thing is they gave us a free ticket to give to one of our viewers.
Yeah, I really appreciate them giving us that free ticket because this is going to allow us not only to expand just the community with them and people going to Warzone in Houston, but just expand what we led for this podcast is we just want the community to grow. We just want everyone to play. So big
Yeah,
thanks for them to giving us that ticket.
I was pretty happy about it just because we've only been doing this podcast for maybe a month now. This will be about a month with this recording out, and our main motivation for this was to grow the community and to try and put a scope on heresy. That there's lots of groups that talk about heresy, and I love a lot of the guys who talk about it, but they talk about it as heresy for heresy. And I wanted to talk about this in a way, and you and Kyle both wanted to talk and experience in a way where we could relate heresy to other people and try to grow the community up to try and break down some of the walls between heresy and some of the outside games.
Yeah, because
Warzone,
we have 3 different viewpoints, I think, and I would like people to understand that, like
yeah.
really
So,
drive that ball.
and the coolest thing about this is like Warzone is one of those places that when I met the guys from Warzone, I met them at some other events, and they were the guys who were really inviting for me. They got me like full tilt back into heresy because I took a back seat for a couple of years because I was moving to San Antonio and I was doing some things and it kind of pivoted out. I've always been really big in the game, like I've always enjoyed it, but I wasn't as involved as I wanted to be. And the Warzone crew, 100% were just like, "How long you been playing? Cool. How come you're not at our games? How come you're not talking about it? You should show up and play with whatever army you want. You have how many points? You should show up to the Apocalypse game." And it was the first time where guys wanted me to come out and play a game just to have people play the game and have fun. And there wasn't like a, "Hey, you can show up, but don't bring this or don't bring that." It was show up and play what you want to play. You'll get the reception you deserve. Now, that is a super, super ominous thing to hear. The first time you hear it, you're like, "I'll get what I deserve." And what that basically means is like, if you show up and you're playing super competitive crazy, they're going to treat you like you're super competitive crazy. Competitive in and of itself is not bad. When you're competitive to a point where you're competitive above making new friends, this is where heresy wants you to change your ideology on it. Heresy is for fun. Heresy is for meeting new people, playing new people, sharing a beer with a guy across the table from you. And it's not so much about the points or the winning. It's about the army looked fantastic. The list was fun to play against. The gimmick was hilarious. That's what Warzone really showed me about heresy. I also got that from the Adepticon crew, don't get me wrong, but Adepticon is thousands of people, so that you're going to find somebody there that you like. That's it's like going to a concert. You're going to bump into some like-minded people. at these more local events, it's fantastic to find a community that's inviting, regardless of what Legion you play, how experienced you are. I I even told some guys last year, I was like, well, I have multiple armies. You want to bring an extra one? They're like, yeah. If you're okay with somebody playing with an army, bring an extra one. So if somebody wants to hop in, we can just throw them in a game. They were totally okay with that. There's a couple of guys who borrow armies to attend Warzone because they don't have armies of their own yet, but they love to play the game and they want to have more people, so they bring them in. It's a fantastic event. It's probably one of the best events in Texas. There are some other ones that are worth mentioning, like the guys in Dallas that do the Taking of Phoenix campaign. Those guys are a really good group too, and they get involved in all the other circuits like Adepticon and whatnot. Fantastic group too. Warzone is just one of those events that it hit me early, and they were really inviting early, so I do everything I can to support them. And they're just a good group of guys. Like, you guys have met them, you've done some games with some of those guys. They're just really cool dudes, and I've never had a bad game down there whatsoever.
Yeah, and on that note, if y'all are listening, whoever's listening to this, if y'all come up to us at Warzone, or whoever wins the ticket, if you come up, shake our hand, and say, "Hey, I like listening to ramblings from the warp. I'll buy you a drink, and we'll have a drink or a shot together." But on just thinking about it, so how are people gonna be able to win this ticket, Gabe? How are we doing this?
So we'd like to hear from you guys. Uh, the main reason that we started doing this is, like I said, is we wanted to bring more people in, and we wanted to kind of break down some of the walls between, the Age of Sigmar group and Heresy, the 40K group and Heresy, and kind of bring more people into both sides of the hobby. Christian adamantly hits me over the head with a loot that says 40K every chance that he can to get me back into 40K, and I'm totally okay with it. We do the same thing with Heresy. So what we want to do is we want to hear from you guys. I want you guys to comment on the video, give us an idea, pitch us an idea of what you want to see on this show. Whether it's, asking a question, or it's, just telling me about your Legion, tell me about where you play, tell me where you're from. Post a comment on there. When you guys post that comment, we'll throw you into a raffle. Now, between now and the end of July, because Warzone is in September, it's at the beginning of September. This year, it's actually going to be from September 5th, 6th, and 7th, at least for the Heresy event. Each one of those comments you go in there, we're going to throw you in an entry for the raffle. And at the end of this, what we're going to do is we're going to go through there, look at all those. We're going to get your ideas. We're going to put that all in there. And that's going to lead into basically the back half of what we're doing today. So after this announcement, we're going to look into some Q&As. Some of you guys have sent us some questions. Some of you guys already had some things you wanted to know about. I've looked in the comments. You guys have been talking about the Legions. We're doing our best to get some Legion content out there. So leave us a comment. We'll put you in. Now, on that small caveat, you can't just put comment over and over and over again. Comment on the videos. We'll honor it on any video that's published between now and the end of July. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Feel free to hop into the Discord. Tell us some more. We're going to go off the comments on YouTube. I can't wait to give away this ticket. I can't wait to get some of you guys out here, meet some new people, bring this in. And if you get a ticket and you don't have an army, holler at me. We'll see if we can take care of that too.
This episode, I want to see some comments that are about what's your favorite Legion? Tell me what your favorite Legion is.
I'd like to know what your favorite Legions are. And one of the most common questions you're going to see in Horse Heresy is, how did you pick your Legion? We've already had that comment once. We're hoping to address that soon. If you have a Legion that you're proud of, tell us why you picked that Legion. Help your fellow gamers out. Maybe you beat me to the punch and you're the motivation for somebody to play Alpha Legion or Death Guard. Tell me your favorite Legion, or tell me what legions you're curious about even. Tell me a Legion you have questions about, or if there's even a unit in a Legion you have a question about. Bring us into your gaming, and let's bring you into ours, and let's talk about it.
And this goes out to anyone also trying to come over from 40K too. Just ask us questions, and we'll try to tell you how it relates to our game and what the Legion actually does in our game.
Absolutely. And that's the goal, right? Is we want to grow all communities. I know we mostly talk about Heresy here. I still have a 40K army. I still play it occasionally. By occasionally, I mean like 3 years ago. But I do still play it some smaller games. So talk about what you want to talk about. Bring it in. We want to hear from everybody. I want to hear from all of you, and I hopefully want to give one of you a free ticket. I'll meet you at Warzone. We'll have a beer together.
And if you're
So
not
with
into
that,
drinking beer, I'll buy you a Coke.
fantastic, even better. So with that being said, we did have some really good questions that were asked by some viewers, and normally Q&A is a really big worry for me because I'm worried that people are going to ask some crazy unhinged questions, which I'm okay with unhinged questions, but these are actually really, really good questions that specifically have to do with Heresy, some of the events, some of the gameplay. So Kyle, you've got the questions. Go ahead and read them off, and we'll start chewing through this.
First question is, first question is, what do we consider narrative? What kind of gameplay and influence?
Okay. The narrative gameplay style, you have to understand where competitiveness is, the competitive game style versus narrative game style. So let's look at competitive first. The competitive game style is I'm building an army and its main function is to win. Okay. So when you look at an army, like right now, 40K is built in a competitive mindset for what you see to GT. I'm not against that. It's fantastic. That's a place for people to scratch that itch. Totally cool with it. Those guys will build a list, they'll get it painted, they'll run it to an event. The downside of that is it's really hard to appreciate something when you go and you play with it and it doesn't 100% do what you were expecting it to do because you wanted it to win, right? In the narrative side of things, you're building the story before you build the army. You're going in there and you're saying, for instance, let's take the Word Bearers army that I built this year for the raffle, right? For one of the other raffles. The Word Bearers army concept was, hey, we're building a concept around when the Word Bearers went into the Eye Terra and came back, or Terror, no, not Terra, bourbon speaking. They go into the Eye Terror, they come back out. This is the birth of the Galvorback, the Neverborn. This is when they begin showing signs of corruption, and they begin wearing the sigils of corruption, and it started modifying what the word was for the Word Bearers. I built it around that. It was a corruption-based list. Now, does it win? Not really. But it's really fun whenever somebody's like, I'm going to charge that plasma gun squad. Neat, they're corrupted. Hey, what are those Ashen Circle? They're Ashen Circle, but they're super corrupted. What about that Marigal? It is the most corrupted of the corrupted. It is so corrupted, it makes other corrupted people feel pain. Galvorback, corrupted. Argyltal, corrupted. That's the entire idea behind the army. Is it is built around that company, that section of the word bearers, and then pushing them out. When you look at how narrative differs from everywhere else, narrative is scored differently, at least in my mindset. A competitive game is scored based off of, hey, you controlled these objectives, you followed what was on your mission cards, you followed everything that's going on. The narrative game is, hey, was your army painted? Did it look really, really good? Did it look thematic? Was your army like cohesive to the design that you had in mind? That, for me, that's the difference between what you see in regular gameplay and what you see in narrative. Is I like it when the story is built both in the paint job, in the cohesiveness of the list. I don't necessarily need you to tell me like, oh, this is reference from the novel Flight of the Eisenstein when these guys were fighting here and they had this. Like, I don't necessarily need you to go that deep. If you do go that deep, kudos, man. I love you being immersed in your story. It's fantastic. I love to hear those armies as well. The influence that provides is it erodes the need to win, and instead it makes you just want to have an epic battle that tells a good story at the end. You want to be able to sit on a podcast like this or around a table after the game, with a beer or a Coke, or when you're going out to like a post event dinner and you're like, man, that duel was fantastic. I can't believe he got lucky with that shot. Well, yeah, man, it was really similar to what happened in this book. That's really how that guy died. I love that part. of narrative. That's where I think narrative differs. Christian, what do you think?
So when I think narrative, what I liked about the small count of tournaments that I went to for narrative play is that the mission changes every single time we play, and the narrative of it actually is a reenactment of maybe a battle or a situation that happened on the field. Still, one of my favorite missions that was made up that we played is the narrative is you're on a battlefield and not just your foot soldiers are fighting, but aircrafts are fighting. People are fighting above you. Shit's going to be blowing up. That shit that blows up has cargo. What happens to that cargo after it blows up? Well, it falls from the sky. What is it gonna hit? Maybe your foot soldiers. We have falling rhinos doing damage just randomly on the field. That's kind of fun to me. You never know what's gonna happen. So you don't go into that game trying to just outgun your opponent, do all this stuff. It's random scenarios that happen. It actually feels like a real battlefield.
See,
It's
I
changing every round, and I like that.
I love that answer because I completely forgot about that because I'm so used to playing in these. It's easy to forget that in current 40K the maps are pre-drawn.
Yeah.
You have a pre-setup because again, it's a little bit more competitive. That's not a bad thing. That's good for the people that want to play that way. What I like in Horse Heresy, and you said it, is one map is going to have a lot of trees. The next map's going to have a lot of building. The next mission, it's super night fighting. Nobody can see anything. I love that, and I do love the mission with the falling cargo. That's a fantastic mission. I love how it works, and I love the fact that yeah, every game's a little bit different. Kyle, how do you feel about it?
Honestly, I didn't know it was a thing. I've only ever played in the Alamo GT and now Wargames Con, and I never really noticed because I was never exposed to anything else. Now that you mention it, I'm like, yeah, they did explain to me, hey, these rhinos are falling out of the sky because there's a space battle going on above you. And I was like, that's pretty legit. And then I was like, now I have to dodge these things. The mission set up for Alamo GT were pretty thematic. I enjoyed that. But I didn't know, like, I mean, you don't know what you're missing if you've never had anything else. So until we started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that's how Warhammer plays.
Yeah, and I know me personally, like there are times when I'm playing Horse Heresy and I have an idea and I'm like, no, that's a competitive thought. Stop that. And it's just because I'm trying to curtail myself to make sure I still enjoy the game because I have a habit of every now and again somebody will be like, oh yeah, well I bet Gabe can fix this, and I'm like, what am I breaking? What am I doing? And I tell myself, like, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit. That felt a little toxic. And I love the fact that the Horse Heresy community actively tries to control that. It's not to say that 40K is necessarily a toxic environment. It's an unforeseen byproduct of a highly competitive game. Every highly competitive game is going to have that byproduct. It's unavoidable.
Now, Gabe, hold up. Let's present flowers where flowers are due. You just said that you also like the 40K narrative side of it, so it's not all bad.
No. What I'm saying is, no, 100%. The 40K narrative guys were a riot, man. That
Yeah.
was the first time in a while that I was like, damn, maybe I do want to play 40K. Dude, it hit me rough. I was like, ugh, I kind of want to play in that big ass terrain. Like I kind of do. So I love that.
One of the guys in that narrative event came over and asked to borrow one of my pie plates because they didn't have one and a scatter die. And he was like, and I didn't even ask, but he was like, yeah, man, we got this big old cannon that's shooting across the table and it's blowing up all these things. It's really awesome. And I went over and then I looked and I was like, this is a whole new world. Like there's a dragon and there's like I'm pretty sure that's just a gigantic plasma gun on a tank. That's awesome. I was like, man, this is outside my wheelhouse. I'm going back to my table.
Yeah, and so I love that, just that competitive side. There's always going to be some hiccups with that, but all in all, that's for me. That's a big thing. Is I think narrative is more about enjoying the story and enjoying the theme, and it's more about awarding the people having fun rather than the guys who are just dominating.
And some of these narrative missions, sometimes they won't hit as like we want them to. The thing about these narrative missions, it's everyone has a story, everyone has a scenario that they want to tell, and you could turn that into a mission. And like I said, it probably won't hit, it probably will, but the more you play it, the more you can refine it, and you can make a great narrative mission. And that's one thing I love that we could build on. And game influences and gameplay, you could take from any other board game. You could take little pieces that you like from any other board game and try to throw that into your narrative game to make it make sense. And that's honestly what I love about it.
Hell yeah, man. All right, Kyle, what's the next question we got?
We've gone to two, or I've been to two. You've been to a whole lot more, and you've got some more coming up this year. One of the questions that the event organizers who we've made friends with have asked us, and I've seen them ask it, and I don't have an answer for this, so I'm definitely glad I'm asking it. What kind of prize support do we think is missing at Heresy events? What type of awards would you like to see?
Okay.
This is a tough one.
Okay. I have answers to this, but man, y'all are gonna have to put on your tinfoil hats. I will always love a best painted award. I will always love it. But I'll be damned if I'm not going to take this opportunity to say, you bitches need to start making display boards again. Bring display boards back. Make display boards a thing. They're amazing. They add to the depth of your army. In the events I've been to in the last couple of years, I've only met like 4 or 5 guys that are doing display boards, and that's across an entire year, right? Now, at the big stuff like Adepticon, they're very, very common, but I would love to see display boards be part of the painting stuff to make those awards even more influential. I'm always going to want a best painted award. The award that I think is missing, because best painted is a thing right now, but it's always kind of like I'm not going to say a consolation prize, but it's one of the one-off things. The awards I feel that are missing are the ones that are built around the actual narrative itself. A lot of the games we go to, we see, the best loyalist, the guy who performed the best as a loyalist. And that's a combination of certain scores. And some of that is sportsmanship, some of it's painting, some of it's list composition, things like that. I'd like to see an award for the guy who put the most thought into his army, that really wanted that army to tell a story and played it like it told the story. Um, One of the ones that comes to mind is one of the friends that we've made at some of these. His name's Richard. He plays Imperial Fists. This guy's always got a story for his stuff, and I love it. He's always got a story. He's got some guys that have nicknames because in a previous game they survived this and they took that into a new thing. Um, I love that concept. I love rewarding that concept. I also like the idea of having tangible awards like purity seals. I'm huge on purity seals. Something you can throw in a bag and say like, "Hey, this is my award for, best narrative or best painted." I love having those kind of things that
Or you can wear them on your hair like a hairband. Shout out, Austin.
yeah, like I love the idea of having awards that you can actually put on your bag when you go places, like a pin, things like that. I think that's what's missing, honestly, for me. That's the main one. I think I would love to see narrative more highly rewarded, and I would like more awards that I can actually put on my bag and carry around. Because I love, like, we have a couple of friends that do some stuff. Nillaby Novelties. They do a lot of Rock Slate stuff for us. we've got a couple of friends that do some purity seals. I know that, you know, we have a couple of companies that produce some awards and stuff for some of these events. And it's never anything I can just throw in my bag and carry. You know, the Alamo GT, you win a Bowie knife, and that's really awesome. But I can't take a Bowie knife to Adepticon. Not without breaking at least like 3 state laws. So I like something that I can put on my bag that says, "Hey, I went and I did this," and something that, you know, you can have with you and you can be proud of it, and other people can say, "Hey, man, that's a really awesome purity seal. It looks like you won this thing." I like that approach. I've always liked that approach. I love trophies and I love things like that, but having something you can carry with you on your bag so that even your army transport begins to tell a story, I think that's what's missing.
On that note, Gabe, um, one prize that I think you got that you really liked, and I think you forgot. Don't you have? It's not a scatter dice. You have like a template or something. I think you got from Adepticon
Oh,
that you really really like.
so
Super
okay.
template.
That was a cool
The
prize
super
support. Yeah.
template. That wasn't prize support. That's what's crazy is that was not prize support. The first game we played in the grand team event, which is a 4-man team event where you played in rotating pairs. The very first opponents that we played against were like, "Hey, do you guys want flexible tape measures or a super template?" And I'm like, "I could always use another template." And they just gave it to us as a thank you for being our opponent. It wasn't prize support. It was literally just a gift that they gave all of their opponents throughout that event.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool. That's something that could be turned into prize support because that was like a one fix all like template, right? It did multiple things.
Yeah, it's an all-in-one 3-inch template, 5-inch template, and a flame template.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what you were getting at right there is when we say what kind of prize support do we think is missing from the Horus Heresy, the Bowie knife is real cool. I'll never say it's not. That's amazing, but more practical things for people to use for the game. Maybe cool scatter dice. I don't know. That's,
Well, see, and like I said, it's just things I'd like to be able to take to other places. I know that I've gone to a couple events. I actually have a jar upstairs full of dice I've won from every event I've gone to, where I've won a set of dice or I've bought a set of dice, where you can have a custom set of dice that are like, you know, Warzone 2025. They do have dice there, right? But they're for everybody. They're generic dice. I'd love to have a set that say I won Warzone or best narrative Warzone. I know that's hard to do because dice are really small and it's like a lot of custom work. But I love that concept. I love the purity seal concept. I do love the template concept. The idea of being able to say, "Hey, this is our super template," and you can say, you know, game champion, you know, 2025, all of that. I 100% get that, and I would love to see more of that because it's not just an award that hangs on a wall in your room. It's an award you take places and people see it. And you can say, "Yeah, I won that because, you know, I pulled off this crazy assassination in the pit around 5 and it won me the whole thing." That's awesome.
yeah, and I
So
think at
I would definitely
Alamo,
say
I
that.
also saw some guys that were playing with us that had cool like dice holders for certain factions. That could be a thing that could be prize support for like Traitor Legion or Loyalist.
100%. I know that we've seen everything from, you know, one of the cool things about Warzone again is they have some stuff like custom dice boxes that they gave out as an award, some things like that. There's definitely a lot of possibilities. I would just like to see more that I can take from game to game. You know, like it sounds like talking shit, but it is pretty nice to be able to have a template and be like, "Hey, this is that time I was better than you guys, and we all know about it." You know, like it's a crazy thing, but I do like that concept. And then there's also ones where, like me personally, I'll tell you right now, my number one like bothers me is that I've never won best painted at one of these events.
Had 3 armies at once in one event and didn't get it.
It bugs the shit out of me. I cannot tell you how much it's like, because my Ultramarines are on like a baller ass display board. It's it looks good. They look good. The bases are great. Word bearers, same thing. Great board, great bases, great paint job. And every time it's like,
Blood Angels might be the best army you've ever painted.
yeah, that might have been one of the best commissions I've ever done. And like, they never win. And I don't take it personal because there are some guys who have some gorgeous armies, and I don't consider myself like a golden demon level painter. I'm not that crazy.
But
But
I do want to add a caveat here and say that the reason why you didn't is because that one person can't or shouldn't win 2 awards in one tournament.
that's true. There have been a couple of times where I haven't won because I was winning in a different category. That's a true thing.
Yeah.
But I really would take best painted over best overall. I know that sounds crazy.
That's your ego showing. You hear that? You hear that right there? That's your pride fucking with you.
Pride fucking with you.
I'm gonna throw this game. Why? Because I'm gonna win best painted this year. God damn it!
Right. And so because that's one of those. I take a lot of pride in my army, my legion. My Ultramarines especially. I take a lot of pride in that army. I love the way they look. I love the way they play. And I've almost got like a whole legion upstairs. Like I love that army to death. And so I really do would like to see more physical awards that some of these guys can pull around. So, when I go places, I can be like, oh, hey, that guy won best painted at Alamo GT in 2023 or 2024. I love that idea. Not to say you shouldn't have some trophies for your office, but I know that our fabrication company, we make purity seals and we make things like that. And I would love to be able to either sponsor an event or do some things like that where I could say, hey, let me get you some purity seals to give to some of your players so they actually have a purity seal to go with their main award. Keep the main award, but let me throw them a purity seal so they have something to wear on their bag, something to wear on their shirt, something to, wear on their cosplay outfit even, because that's even a thing. There's tons of things that you can get out there. Custom dice bags. I know we have our custom hit bags. We have some of that stuff like that. I would love to have some of that with some award stuff embroidered on it or laser engraved on it, where some guys can show off. You want to be able to show off. You want to be able to say, I was the best at this year, and it's fantastic. I want you to show off your cool stuff. I want you to have cool stuff to have. Just if there's one thing about this hobby that's rung true for all 30 some odd years I've been playing it, we like our cool stuff. I want my custom bag with my custom dice and my custom tray with my custom bag. Nerds want cool stuff, and we want more of it. I want to have 300 purity seals hanging off my bag. Why? Because I can. That's if I had to narrow it down to that, is more show off kind of awards, not so much of the glamorous, like a Rudis or a full size bolt gun. Those are awesome, they're great, but you can't take them with you everywhere.
So Kyle, what's the next question that we have?
All right, this is gonna be some more. What's the word I'm looking for? Guessing, speculation on the 3.0 that we're so excited for dropping. Do you think that the addition of the new stat lines will bog down the gameplay?
Depends on what you think is new.
In the beginning, yes. So let's go off of what we've seen so far, right? I know that when I was reading through the leaks, they were like, yeah, in step 9 of the shooting phase, I was like, holy shit, how many steps are there? Right. And then I thought about it, and some other guys broke it down to me, specifically one of my friends over the accountabilities group. He was like, you have that many steps in the phase right now. We just fucking ignore them, right? And he's right, because so technically right now, when you go to shoot, you pick a unit you're going to shoot with. You select which weapons you're going to shoot with.
Step 2.
You draw line of sight from each model to the model you're trying to shoot.
Fuck that step.
You declare it, then you roll your hits. Then you roll your wounds.
That's
then
one
the
Kyle's
wounds
bad at.
then you allocate the wounds. Then you determine AP values. Then you determine armor saves. Then you roll armor saves. Then you calculate wounds. Then you calculate damage mitigation rolls, and then you remove casualties. That's like an 18-step process. Right? The difference is we're like, okay, looking for 3s to hit. Cool. This many hits. Looking for these to wound. Fantastic. That's 2 at your regular armor, 1 at your invul. We skipped all of those phases just because we know the rules. Right. I do think there are going to be some new additions from some new addition hiccups. So with the new addition, there's going to be some bog downs with challenges until we understand the new challenge phases. With the using of gambits and who can challenge who and when that happens, with it being a little sub phase, I think that's going to bog down the game for like the first 2 games you play, and then you're going to get past it. I think that your different kinds of tests, because now there's cool and wisdom and intelligence, not just leadership.
What the hell is cool?
It's are you cool under fire? Do you panic?
It's composure.
Pretty much. So with that being implemented, a lot of guys are like, oh yeah, well now I've got 500 steps to take. Cool, fucker, you're not taking them all at once.
They're called steps.
No. Like, so far from what I've seen, one weapon is not going to make you take saves on all of those, right? If you're getting hit with a certain weapon, it'll be like, okay, here's a panic test. It's against this stat. Cool, roll that test. Hey, I'm rolling this kind of attack against you. It's going to be a leadership test or a panic test or a cool test or, a wisdom test. Nothing's going to hit you that's going to be like, all right, cool, give me a wisdom test, an intelligence test, a cool test, a leadership test, and then let me know if you're pinned. That's not going to be the case, right? So that bog down isn't as much of a fear as people are concerned it is. The bog down is going to be the learning curve. And that's not bogging the game down. That's learning a new addition. Right? I don't think we're going to see a bog down necessarily. We're going to see a momentary slowdown based off of learning curve. That's what I think.
Yeah, and from looking at it, and that's why I said, like, what in the beginning when we started this question was, what do you consider new? I don't. Yes, it is a new stat line, but it's also GW breaking down the steps so that they're breaking it down and explaining it better, so we don't get confused and go out of steps or anything like that. Like, everything points to certain situations, so we don't have to guess, or people have different ways of reading rules. Like, I think they're just narrowing it down and dumbing it down, so when we read it through the steps, it says, hey, this is how it is. This is how it's going to be. This only checks this. This only checks that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I also think, like, another thing that we have to remember is it's a new edition. Right now, what bogs the game down, in my opinion, is I have rerolls with my rerolls. It bogs the game down like crazy. The new rules have pretty much eliminated rerolls from what we've seen. From what we've seen in the drops and what we've seen in some of the leaks that we've come across, a lot of the rules like Shred doesn't give you a reroll anymore. Twin Linked doesn't necessarily give you a reroll anymore. So the time that you're potentially losing with the challenges and like maybe redefining all these steps, which again, once you have them down, you're going to skip through them and only apply the ones that are relative to what you're doing at any given time. It's going to go faster because it's no more of the let me roll 30 dice. Well, let me roll them again. Now let me roll the wound. Well, let me roll them again. And then you go to take your armor save. You're like, okay, there's my armor save. Fantastic. Let me roll them again for my feel no pains or my shroud. I think that's what's really going to remove that bog down that you're worried about. Is the rules are streamlining, but they're not simplifying per se. So I still think the game's going to be fantastic. I still think that we're going to see early learning curve is what it's really going to be. But after that, it's going to be business as usual. It'll be fine.
So I think one thing that I do for my Thousand Suns that helps me out, and if you check out our shorts on our YouTube video, you'll see them, is I have these little tokens that I 3D printed that remind me of what my Prosper and Arcana, what my psychic abilities are for each group, so that I'll remember that they have it when it comes time to it. And I think I'm gonna have to fabricate something like that for this new one that's like, this group is panicked and this group is pinned and this group is, fleeing, or whatever these new statuses and conditions are. Or maybe I'll have to have one that says like, this group causes pinning, this group causes, a cool check, something like that, like a spreadsheet that I can put next to my guys to remind me of what what they are.
And that's one of those things where the more you play something, and this has been the downside for a lot of guys, is, like in your case, you only play maybe once every few months. So the repetition never sits in. The guys that go and play Heresy, 2 or 3 times a month or play every other weekend, they have a lot of time. They have a lot of time invested. They have a lot of repetition, a lot of memory. A lot of it's there. I think once that's established, these new systems will not be difficult. A lot of guys are kind of worried that there's going to be a lot of tests. They're going to bog the game down. I don't think that's the case. I think once you get the rhythm of it and you have enough reps under your belt of the game, it's all going to be just learning the new keywords, the new rules per se for each weapon. Armor bane changed, Melta changed. Once you get used to all of these changes, the game's going to run really smooth. I think it's actually going to run faster.
And on speaking of that, what honestly bogs the game down, and this is why we made this podcast and why we're going to help, is we're just going to learn the rules together. Whole new edition. We're going to go through everything together. That's one big thing that bogs the game down. And I think we said this in the past episode, is no one has content on learning these rules. No one has content of reading, like, just beginning general rules of the game.
That's something I did some research on before we started this podcast, and I really got into watching some battle reports. Because the just like video games, the best way to learn is to watch somebody play. And my biggest problem was finding a channel that actually explained why they were doing what they were doing. I understand it's the general basics of the game, that your ballistic skill -7 is what you're hitting on, but I found it to be confusing until I started getting like practice games under my belt and actually like started to understand. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm hoping that this podcast will help other people learn what the general rules are for a basic beginner noob who doesn't get to play every day.
Yeah, what I'm hoping to do is when 3.0 drops, what I really love to do is bridge the gap between what the battle reports are showing you and what's in the books. So battle reports are really good about showing you how a legion will play or how certain legions do things. The problem with most battle reports is they assume that you read a book before you got there and that you already know what they're rolling and why. And so battle reports right now feel really sculpted for the everyday gamer that plays games and just wanted to see like a cool idea or a cool tactic. It doesn't do a very good job of saying, this is the phase breakdowns, this is the shooting breakdown. And I'd love to bridge that gap. I'd love to do a video on explaining all those processes and doing that. I would love to do that. So what other questions do we have?
Next one that we have: with the drops we have seen, how do you think Legion benefits and rights of war will change, or at least how do you hope?
I'm going to be honest. I have some speculations, but the honest answer is I have no fucking idea.
So what's your hopes? What's your dreams?
I'm hoping that Legion benefits will stay fairly similar to how they are now, where you have a generic benefit that applies to your army. And what I'd love to see the Rite of Wars do is change the army composition.
Yeah.
Right now you have Rite of Wars, like, so let's take Death Guard, for example. Death Guard can take a Rite of War that says, in this Rite of War, you are limited in taking this many units, but you can bring heavy support squads as troop choices. Okay, that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that you still have to bring 2 compulsory troops in an HQ. Now, in the new edition, they've already said compulsory units are gone, right? What I'd like to see Rite of Wars do is say, hey, while in this Rite of War, you get to ignore the deep strike rules and bring more than 1 unit in at a turn. Or during this, if you build your army with this new auxiliary detachment, it's going to piss some people off because I'm basically describing 40K, which I'm sure Christian was just itching to get that out. 40K right now give you different detachment styles to run your army under. And when you're in that detachment, you get a whole different set of bonuses. I want to see something similar to that, where the Rite of Wars don't just give you new rules, but they sculpt the way the army is built to better reflect the story of that Rite of War. That's what I would like to see. what unpopular opinion, I want Legion detriments to come back, but I'll never get that.
I will say that going back to the battle reports, I was watching for Thousand Suns because that's what I was picking up. I was like, I want to see, what are other people doing with this Thousand Suns that aren't this group, this army that you and I put together. And because they were taking rights of war, they were taking some pretty boring lists. It was all the same. It had all the same shit. And I was like, I mean, how are you gonna have? It confused me at first. Like, how are you gonna have three different channels, three different people playing across the world that all have the same army? And then I realized it's probably because they're all trying to pick a right of war, and they have to pick the only good one, which is the deep strike one. And so they have to bring Magnus, and I'm like, okay, everybody wants to bring Magnus, but I don't feel like I don't want to bring Magnus myself. So I was like, I don't relate to any of these armies
Yeah,
because
and
of that.
and you're right. That is, it's a pigeonhole that heresy players have a bad habit of putting themselves into. It turns into the argument that I see all the time right now, which is I'll look at a list, and the first question I always ask is, why the hell are they using a Delegatus? Then I'm like, oh yeah, because they want to run a right of war, and it's the cheapest way to do it. And so you end up with kind
Not
of
every list has to have a Praetor, Gabe.
right. Not every list has to have a Praetor. How dare you, sir? Um, what it really comes down to for me is I think you're right. I think the right of wars right now make the game very cookie cutter. And it's either you have a really good cookie or you put cayenne in it and no one likes your cookies. So a good friend of mine that I played Adepticon was like, hey, I have this crazy list with world leaders. I'm like, cool, what is it? He goes, it's just 60 Ravagers and Land Raiders. Okay, that is not going to make friends. He's like, yeah, I know. Cool. Those cookies had cayenne in them. Right? Then you end up with the right of war list where a lot of Ultramarine players fall into. Like me personally, I think the Ultramarine right of war in 2.0 right now is stupid. I do not like it. You have to bring an additional HQ, an additional troop. It has to be a compulsory troop. And all you get out of it are orders that come with detriments. And they don't really do a lot for you unless you really sculpt the entire army around making it work. I feel that there are other ways to make the army viable and tell a better story without being forced into that one frame of mind. The other problem with it is you end up with armies like Dark Angels that have like 9 rights of war. And so now you don't know where to go with it. You have too many options, right? I want the right of wars to be less cookie cutter, like you're saying. I'd love for them to be more accessible, to do more toward the story of why that right of war exists. So Iron Warriors, they have Hammer of Olympia. That story is told in a book. The Hammer of Olympia formation is talked about in a book. It's an actual formation in a book. And the Right of War does a really good job of conveying that. I love that Right of War. I love the way it plays. I'd like to see more Rights of War do that. That's what I'd like to see. The Legion benefits, again, I think I think I'd like to see them stay kind of what they are. It's just a static benefit across the board. But I have no idea how it's going to affect in 3.0 based on what we've seen so far. And like I said, I know I'm not going to get Legion detriments back, so meh.
What thoughts do you have, Christian?
I I honestly don't know. Like cuz a a point of me a part of me wants to be selfish and say once everyone's rules come out for certain armies, I would not like there to be generic rights of war for everyone. I think that they should be on there. And this might not even be good for the game, but this is probably something that I would want to try is just have rights of war for certain armies and not have generic ones.
Ooh, that's a
Like
hot
the
take.
That
like
that
the
is
one
yeah.
the one that says that everybody that you could take extra dreadnoughts, the one that
Well,
everybody hates.
I'm looking at a 2.0. I'm not really thinking about 3.0 when I'm thinking this, but the generic rights of war, some of them are just so good that you're
There's no
right.
point in
And
2.0.
most people stop taking what they take the narrative out of their army, they take uniqueness out of their army,
Yeah.
and
I
they
see
just
that.
start building like the all Terminator Dreadnought list. Um,
Why? Because
know,
that's this fucks.
Well, so I agree, but I do like generic Rights of War because it allows every legion to have
True.
something cool. Like I do like, Pride of the Legion. I do like Drop Pod Assault because it opens doors where certain armies can play outside of their box. I do like that.
That's why we know it's a hot take, because
Yeah.
that's also what's unique about Heresy is that the generic ones let you do everything. But I don't know if this is just me wanting to see people stay true to their legion and be unique with their legion and try to make it work like that. That's probably just what I want to see. But that's why I said it's a hot take and not everyone's gonna like it. I'm pretty sure no one's gonna like it, but but hey, this is why we're rambling, right? That's something I would like to
Yeah.
see, because it will force people to be unique with their army. And if you truly love your Ultramarines or whatever, you're like, this is my right of
And
war. This is what I have to deal with. And guess what? We're taking it.
I do like that I don't have to take a right of war.
agreed. And I do think that with the new army composition rules, you're definitely going to see some outside the box armies. Those new army composition rules are all over the place. It's buckshot. It's everywhere, which I both love and am hesitant about, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
Yeah, once we get it fully fleshed
Yeah,
out and we know exactly what they're trying to say.
I've said it once. I'll say it every time it comes up. Until we have all of the rules, all of this is information taken out of context.
And this
Yeah.
goes back to question 3, when you were talking, because I was about to bring it up too, and I just remembered. We're really going to see how these rules play out when we see the legions, because I'm willing to bet how confusing Thousand Suns is right now for you, Kyle, is not going to be that confusing in 3.0.
I
I
hope not,
don't
but I
think.
also hope that doesn't mean that they neutered me.
No, not neutered, but it's going to be explained better
Yeah.
to where we know exactly what happens with this psychic ability, and we're not looking through it like we had to. We literally had 2 hours before Alamo of just discussing your army and like, will this work? Is this a psychic ability? Is this a weapon? Or is this a, you know? I think a lot of this is going to be explained better when we have the book. So we can't really just it's all up in the air.
All right, how many questions we have left?
One more.
One more. All right, what's our last question?
Hopefully the answer isn't Perils of the Warp. What do you think will be the biggest headache in 3.0, and what's the biggest positive that you're looking forward to?
How many of y'all just took the biggest fucking drink that you could think of right now because y'all just thought of stuff that was just like, man,
Oh, dude,
this is gonna be
my answer. I have a singular answer to both sides of that question. Let me take a drink. The biggest headache and the biggest positive of 3.0 are going to be the shift in players.
Yep.
I feel wholeheartedly that the 3.0 drop is going to bring me a lot of new players, and I'm excited about it. That's a huge positive. There's going to be a lot of guys that want to get into the game. The biggest detriment is a lot of those guys may come in with the wrong mindset, and I will spend a lot of time doing coaching on how not to be that guy in the hobby. That's the most honest answer I can give you there. I know that a lot of guys are going to be like, well, fuck you too. I don't want to play Heresy. I want you to play Heresy. I just don't want you to be the asshole in Heresy that people talk about when you're not around.
Don't 40K my heresy, bro.
I don't even mind if you 40K a little bit. I mind if you like come in and you're like, yeah, me and my buddies have matching t-shirts to do our matching armies because we dominate everywhere we go. And we're going to break into this Horus Heresy group and show you guys what it means to win. I don't want that. I with all my heart, I don't want that. What I want is the guy who's like, I want to play a game and I want to have a good time and I want to have a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of new players. It's going to be a huge positive. I'm so excited for it. Tons of guys are coming out and saying that they're excited about Heresy. They love the new stuff that's coming out. That's fantastic. The second headache with that is going to be how many of those guys have the right mindset and are wanting to have fun with the game, and how many want to do the baby seal treatment, which is just clubbing baby seals. That's my answer.
Okay, so gameplay wise, from the rules that we've seen and the leaks that we've seen, what do you think will be the biggest headache? Like focusing it down, narrowing it down on just the game, not the people.
If I'm talking about if I'm talking about gameplay from just what I've seen, just off of what I've seen so far, the biggest headache is going to be keeping track of like the damage pools, the way they're working now. You're going to see a lot of guys that are bringing tanks now because tanks have more hit points and it's harder to kill a tank. You can't just get lucky with one shot and pop one anymore. So you're going to see more and more of the guys that are arguing like, well, no, my guy moves, so he's only 1 damage versus 2 damage, or, well, no, I'm armor bane, so they're automatic penetrates. Well, it's a critical hit, so here's the damage. I think that's going to be a headache in the beginning, and it'll iron itself out.
Do you have any concerns for the new Saturnines?
No, they're very straightforward. They're very cut and dry.
Do you think they're overtuned?
No, they're about on par because it looks like what they did was they were like, hey, we're going to make really, really tough Terminators, and we're going to give them guns where they can kill themselves. Or we're going to give them guns that are good, but not amazing. Like the plasma bombards that they have, it's good, it's not amazing. The disintegrator guns are fantastic, but will kill you.
Okay.
Like Kyle, how do you feel about Leviathans?
I've only ever played with them with my Death Guard, and I will tell you right now, I hate every person I ever played against because that Leviathan never got within melee range of shit. Because he hit the floor and everybody las cannoned him to fucking death. That guy has a 0 win record, a 0 table record. He has never made it through a game. I don't think he's even laid a hit, except for maybe on some TAC Marines, which don't count.
Yeah, tell me how
But
you
that
really
tells
feel.
me that
Holy.
he's terrifying. That tells me that he's terrifying. Like, I know his stat block, and I'm like, yo, you're right. This guy's kind of fucked up. I see why you shot him, but also, fuck you for shooting him.
And that's how you should probably feel about
let
a
me play with
shootier
my
version of that.
toys.
I think the shootier version of that is just the
Yeah, I don't think they're overtuned.
Saturday. Yeah.
I don't think they're too crazy.
Let me play with my murder Polly Pockets.
I think they're going to be fine. Like, they're still going to be a fun unit, and especially with some of the newer leaks we got from the new turret that's in the box. I think Saturnine are going to be fine on their own with their 4-up saves and like walking across the field, just being just bulwarks is essentially what they're going to be. They're going to be moving defense networks. I think they're going to be fantastic. They're not overpriced. They're not underpriced. I think they're tooled right. But that's in a vacuum because I don't know what the point values look like for the rest of the game yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they're doing that point value for that unit too, it's I wonder what Primarchs are going to be.
I mean, so
They can't be that far off. I don't think.
So we know that the squad of 3 is the same price as or points as the Praetor, right?
Yes.
So it's a 1-to-1 ratio on that one. What is it? I mean, I'll pull it up my Thousand Sons now because they have a Praetor. How much is my Praetor now? He is 150 points in Cataphractii armor. My five Terminators are 310 that go with him.
So to put that into context, we don't know what your Praetor is going to cost, so we don't have a comparison. And going back to the original root of this question, that's the kind of headache that you're going to experience with newer players. Is they're going to be like, oh, well, this Praetor is 200 some odd points. He's a new hotness. He's in the box. And you're like, all right, my Praetor costs this amount of points. And he doesn't have the extra wound or the extra toughness and all the craziness. So all the way back to the original route, that's going to be the headache. Is it's going to be new players, new addition, the mindset of players coming from other games. We're not going to see just an influx of 40K players coming to Heresy. We're also going to see guys come from other games because they're going to love the way Heresy plays and the way the new rule sets are.
You're going to hear this podcast and be like, I want to play.
I'm hoping so. I hope people listen to this podcast and it's a motivation to, push them in the direction of playing Heresy. As always, you want to get into Heresy, you have questions, holler at me on the Discord. Come talk to me. I'm totally okay with it. I'll talk Heresy with anybody. Except Kyle one-on-one because he makes my ass itch. But
I do that on purpose.
I'll talk Heresy with anybody and I'll discuss it with anyone. The biggest headache, like I said in the beginning, I think it's going to be the new player influx, is people coming in the game with the right frame of mind and wanting to play a game for the immersion rather than playing it for the crunchiness. The game's already crunchy. You don't have to make it more crunchy.
Hey, but we also have to put that the other way too. People that are playing Heresy, we got to understand that yes, we might get some people coming in from other parts, and we got to set a good example and show them. Just like Gabe said, you can't just start off on the bad foot and just say, basically, go fuck yourself. You can't play in our community.
Yeah, and realistically, in our circle of friends, like I'm considered the oppressive one.
And you hold yourself back.
Well, I try to. Now, the reason why I'm considered to be the oppressive one is pretty much everyone we've ever talked to has been like, hey, Gabe, this guy's playing the wrong way. You should do that. And I'm like, oh, I have to put on grown-up lists. And those games are always both really fun and really revealing because it tells me like, okay, cool, you dialed up way too hard. Or that was a really cool idea. We should never do that with our friends. And I appreciate that there's a way for me to play where I can come out with my crazy ideas at like APOC games and do some really cool stuff. And I know what I can and can't do in a game to be that guy. I never want to be that guy. I always want to have a good time. I want people around me to have a good time. I want to be the reason you play the game, not the reason you go back to your group of friends and be like, that guy's a dick. I don't want that. And so, again, open invitation. If you want to come into Discord, you want to talk Heresy, cool, I'm here with you. You want to do some list crafting, you want to talk about the game, you want to talk about the state of it is where it is now, if you want to talk about events, there's a whole section in the Discord channel for you guys to post about your own events. If you're in Bama and you've got an event coming up, post it in the Discord. There's a whole thread about it. I want you guys to share your events. And if you want me to give you a shout out for your event, put it in the comments on YouTube. We'll try to give a shout out to your event when we can. And until the end of July, it could earn you a free Warzone ticket. So I can't stress that enough. Open the conversation, come out, talk to some people, meet some cool people. The more you meet, the more you're going to get into the game, the more guys you're going to find to play, the better time you're going to have. I guarantee it.
Thanks, Dos Equis, man.
Most interesting man in the world. Well, with that, I think we're gonna wrap it up, guys. Again, thanks for joining us again for another episode of Ramblings from the Warp from Late Night Dice. As always, we loved having you guys here. Again, please leave a comment, hop into Discord. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. Until then, happy dice, happy life, boys. Have a great time.